This is a Rondo example. It's a movement by Beethoven, his String Quartet, Opus 18, number 4. This is the fourth movement. C minor is the key. Like I say, it's Rondo. Let's see which kind it is. We've talked about there being two types of Rondo. There's the 5-part and the 7-part. And it just comes down to counting how many A sections you have. Go ahead and listen to it and get to know this theme here. This is the A section. We call it a refrain, the refrain. A material is refrain. Okay, so okay, get to know it. A's here, I've marked it in the score for you. We get a second statement here. That's it again. And see, double bars are helping here a lot. This is different material. Here it is again, but it's in another part. Second violin gets to kick it off here. And then the first one supplies that part of it. So there it is again. That's a third time. And then I'm going to jump down here. Okay, so there it is one last time. And let me see, where did I put the other page? Oop, I'm missing my last page. I'll find it in a sec. That is the last statement. Coda comes on the next page. I'll have to locate that. With 4 statements, abaca. We've got 7-part rondo then. Take a look at the board up there for a sec. Here's where we get 4 statements. 1, 2, 3, 4. That makes it 7-part. So all you're doing to figure out which of the two it is counting how many times you hear the A material come back again. 4 times makes it a 7-part rondo. Now, we talked about how binary form is a basic building block for this. Check it out. Here's your A material. It's rounded binary because this comes back here in the middle of the second section. And see how easy it is to see the section. Section 1 of the refrain is this system. Double bars, mark it off. That's the first reprise. Second reprise, second section, marked off, double bars, easy to see. This idea coming back, the opening idea coming back, makes it rounded as we just said. It modulates here, PAC in 5, so it's continuous. All that stuff we know from study of binary form, it just plugs in here as different units. The refrain is binary. We'll see that the first episode, the B material, which starts right here, it too is binary in form. So here's our refrain. It's let's take a few minutes to take a look at some of the details of it. So here's this tune coming to a half cadence here, and then it starts the same way and then veers off to cadence in a new key with a PAC. So half cadence PAC, that's a period. And because they match, the openings of the two phrases match, you have a parallel period. So there's period 1 or section 1. Then here, because it's rounded, we get this part which is called a digression. So a good review of binary stuff. The digression, which we expect to use old motives but vary them. Maybe some new stuff too, but a lot of times it reuses old things, melodic ideas, but changes the way it presents them. So sequences and modulation are really common. In this case, you can look at the bass line and see how sequential it is. It's descending fifths motion, root motion, and that idea comes back here. It's a sequence. Then it moves to the 5, which is what we expect at the end of the digression, because it's going to set up the return of the main theme. That's what made it rounded. So here's a sequence. It's got some chromatic notes in there, a little tonicization of 4, of 3, Italian 6 going to 5, half cadence. Okay, and then this is familiar material. it's like the opening of this with something kind of like the end of this one, but now it's in the main key. So you get a PAC in the main key. All right, with a half cadence, interruption, restart, and the PAC here, you have a period. Weak cadence, stronger cadence, one big period. So, period 1, period 2, that gives us binary form. We've got two different sections within it. Again, it's marked off in both ways. The repeats and the cadences both work together here to help define it as binary. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's take a look at the B material. Notice the B material jumps right in, so there is no transition in between the two. It's very abrupt. You jump right into the B stuff. Okay, I'll let you practice on this one. This one's a little bit trickier because, well, I'll give it away because it is a little bit tricky. There's a return here of the opening, and so you'll want to label it. And I'll let you decide on what that is. You can see it's binary right away. I sort of jumped across that. But the B material is binary again. You've got the repeat sign here, repeat sign there. This score is missing the repeats on this side, but it should have the little dots there because this is repeated. So two repeated sections makes it binary. And notice that you've got a PAC here, but in what key? It's not C minor anymore, but 5-1 in A flat. And that's the starting chord. So this is very abrupt. You're starting a new section with a new theme, the B material, and with the new key of A flat, 6 in the key of C minor. Alright, then I'll let you look at that in more detail, but the main thing for us, two PACs mark off two sections. The B material is binary in form. Now there's no transitional anything between B and A, A2, the second statement of the refrain. Again, it's abrupt. If there had been something, we'd call it a retransition because it would be regaining our C minor, which you can see takes over here. It follows the structure of A exactly, but this being Beethoven, he loves to vary things. So now instead of writing a repeat sign and going back, he writes it out so that he can change the rhythm. And listen to how intense it is. Listen to that recording and just hear the throbbing of all the eighth note motion in all the accompaniment parts. It really makes it more intense. The crescendos start earlier than they did in the original. In the original statement of the refrain, measure 3 has the crescendo, but here the whole thing is pounding at you with really thick chords and getting louder from the first measure of that phrase. And he does it again. You can see the crescendos marked again. So there's some variety in there, but it's clearly the refrain with some variation. That's interesting that we're getting variation intermingled with this idea of the Rondo idea, departure, return. Okay, now let me jump ahead here. Again, the repetition, varied repetition of the second half of the refrain. Here's the new thing, C. Again, no transition. You just jump right in and you get this new idea here. So contrast. There are some connections that can be made with the opening. It definitely fits in the same movement, but it is different. It is contrasting. The whole texture, the way it comes in imitatively like that's kind of neat. Okay, PAC in the new key, first section, first refrain. So that's section 1 for a couple reasons, the repeats and the closure. Notice it's one phrase, but it is a period because it is a PAC. Period just means you're done. You've finished out a unit. Okay, and then hanging out on 5 for a good long while. And closing it back in C. Now this, notice, is C major, not C minor. So the main key, it shares the same key center, but it's changed mode. D was in 6. So we've basically gone minor 1, 6, back to minor 1 for the refrain, and now we're in major 1, the parallel major for the C music. Okay, and then A3, refrain, again. there's more variation going on with some interplay between the different instruments. It's kind of like the second violin comes in and then everybody else comes jumping in on top of it. Growing in intensity again, he's kind of playing with that idea. Okay, let me jump down because here we get an example of a transition. It's a transition and not a retransition because we're moving from A material to B material. Now this is B2, so this is abacaba instead of abacada. Abacaba, there's our B. Sandwiched in between A3 and B2 is this transition. A transition's job is to set up for the section that follows, and it almost always goes to the dominant. This is C minor here, or major. That's a C major chord, okay. And it stays. So the B2 is also in C major, just like the C was. But it's bringing back the B material. Okay, so the transition gets to 5 in that key. And the only way it can sound transitional here is not through modulation, because you were in C and you're going to go to C again. The tonic does not change between the two, so we don't have to modulate. We don't have to change our key center. We're just changing mode. But that makes it all the more important that the whole rhetoric of it, the way materials are presented changes. Here we've got some things that are kind of reminiscent of the C material. But up on top of it, the main activity in the first violin is a whole bunch of arpeggios, and they get faster and wilder as you go. There's a lot of emphasis on the dominant by the time you get to here. See that 5/7 is just held out for 1, 2, 3 measures. There's a fermata, a pause, and then you're ready for some B material. So there's a good example of brilliant style, arpeggios that go wild. Okay, and then we get the B material greatly varied, and then a retransition comes here. It's called a retransition because we're getting in between the B and the A material, from an episode to the refrain. It too ends on the dominant. See that 5? There's a lot of G in the bass here, starting all the way back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 even measures of waiting for that dominant to resolve, and finally you get it here. The material is very much based on A stuff, A's content. But it does really turn to brilliant style here. There's some scalar stuff, but there's also arpeggio to get up high, and then scalar arpeggio, and a lot of arpeggiation going on at the end. That's brilliant style going on. Now I'm missing the coda, but there is a coda, and you can look at that in the score. He contracts the A by not doing repeats. So A4 is compressed just by lacking the repeats, and then you'll clearly see how the coda works. And it's interesting to see what the coda brings back and what it changes. It usually sort of grabs material from other places and makes it interesting in how it combines them, and that's true in this coda for sure.